All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you for jumping on yet again. I feel like this has got to be my seventh or eighth time on Substack today. No, I think this is my third time, but I appreciate you all continuing to come back. And, when I saw the new reporting about Abrego Garcia whooping Donald Trump's DOJ in court yet again, I had to invite my friend Adam Klasfeld on, who, is doing the great gavel to gavel coverage in these court hearings. And because I wanted him to talk not only about this new court order by Judge Sines up in Maryland in Abrego's deportation case, but he's going to be covering the case down in Tennessee. Those would be the trumped up charges, in my opinion, against Abrego Garcia. And the judge is going to litigate his vindictive prosecution motion next week. And Adam will be there bringing it all to us. So let me count us down and we'll get going proper here. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you, friends. Our friend Adam Klasfeld of All Rise News is back. As you've come to realize, he is sort of the best gavel to gavel coverage of high profile, consequential cases all around the country. And I'm thrilled that he is jumping on to talk with us today about a new development in the never ending saga of the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. And Abrego Garcia just won yet another victory against the Trump administration in court, this time in his Maryland deportation case. So, Adam, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Can you bring us up to speed on what just happened?
Thank you very much, Glenn, for the kind introduction. Yes, Abrego has his winning streak extended yet again because the government keeps trying to do things that they don't have legal authorization to do, like trying to send him to a growing number of African nations, seemingly chosen at random on the map. For the second time, they're trying to send him to Liberia. And as the judge pointed out, there is a country that the government is legally authorized to send Kilmar Abrego Garcia, where Kilmar Abrego Garcia himself has said he would go, and that is Costa Rica. And they are insisting on sending him to Liberia. Here is from Judge Zinis's decision. Since August 2025, respondents have refused to procure Abrego Garcia's immediate removal to Costa Rica in favor of phantom removals to 3, maybe 4 African countries. Indeed, since Abrego Garcia secured his release from criminal custody in August 2025, respondents have made one empty threat after another to remove him to countries in Africa with no chance of success. At the same time, respondents purposefully and for no reason ignored the one country that has consistently offered to accept Abrego Garcia as a refugee and to which he agrees to go. And I think that's such a crucial point that doesn't get enough attention. I was in court in Maryland, in Greenbelt, when Abrego's lawyers said on multiple occasions, on different days, that if the government wanted to send Abrego Garcia today to Costa Rica, they could do that. And they have yet to supply an explanation for why they are not doing that other than vindictiveness. Originally, they were going to send him to Uganda. Then they were going to send him to Eswatini, the last absolute monarchy on the African continent. Then it was Liberia. I think I'm actually missing one along the way there. But the first time that Judge Zinis rejected that, she did it on the grounds of there was no final valid order of removal, that the 2019 order of removal rejected Abrego's defenses, but it didn't take that additional step of saying Kilmar Abrego Garcia is hereby ordered removed from the United States to X, whatever X may be. So there was never a final order of removal. So what Trump's DHS did, they went to an immigration judge and they said, hey, can you fix that thing with a nunc pro tunc order? And without having everyone's eyes glaze over, they wanted to correct what they described as a scrivener's error in the 2019 order of removal to say, oh, actually, he meant to say you're hereby removed to Liberia. And the judge rejected that. They said, okay, assume that this final order of removal became final. Well, it became final in 2019. And there's a 90-day clock, and that clock has now lapsed. And so that's a legal technicality of why this effort to deport Abrego Garcia once again, rather than let him defend himself at an upcoming trial, has failed. That's the legal reason. But the reason that people should really appreciate and internalize is that if the federal government, if Trump's administration wanted Abrego Garcia out of the country, they have a ready option, which is Costa Rica, which Abrego Garcia, through his attorneys himself, have put on the table multiple times. And I know because I was there in court when they said it to a judge.
And my informed speculation, in fact, I'm going to say the reasonable inference I draw from all of those circumstances as to why the Trump administration refuses to send him to Costa Rica is because he said he'd be willing to go to Costa Rica, and for no other reason, which I agree with you. It feeds into his vindictive prosecution claim, and we're going to turn to that in a minute. But I know you were reading from page 8 of the 10-page order, which is exactly the same language that caught my attention. And then Judge Sines goes on page 9 to say respondents, meaning Christy Nome and the other named respondents in this case, have done nothing to show that Abrego Garcia's continued detention in ICE custody is consistent with due process. Indeed, it violates his due process rights. And I like the headline that The Guardian used to describe this legal development. Quote, ICE cannot re-detain Kilmar Abrego Garcia, judge rules. So now, Adam, take us forward to next Thursday when you're going to be down in the Middle District of Tennessee in the courtroom covering the motion to dismiss that Abrego Garcia and his lawyers have filed in his criminal case, which look like some trumped up charges that were brought because I don't think the Trump administration liked the fact that Abrego Garcia was winning in his immigration case. So they dropped this criminal case on his head. So talk about what you expect to see in that courtroom next Thursday.
What I expect to see is Abrego Garcia starting at an advantage. The fact that this hearing is taking place, a vindictive prosecution hearing, means that he has gone farther than any criminal defendant in Trump 2.0, or frankly, in my career as a legal journalist, in proving vindictive prosecution. This hearing is happening because Judge Crenshaw found that that he made the bar, that he reached the bar to prove vindictive prosecution to the satisfaction that one was warranted, because he showed that Todd Blanche, Trump's former attorney and deputy attorney general, went on Fox with Laura Ingraham and said that the entire case had its genesis because a judge questioned the decision to spirit him out of the country to CCOT. He said that on national television. That was the evidence that causes Judge Crenshaw to order this evidentiary hearing, which has been repeatedly delayed. Originally, they tried to call Todd Blanche as a witness. I don't believe that will be happening. I think there will be much lower level witnesses within the Department of Justice, maybe the same Homeland Security investigations agent who we've seen affiliated with this case a number of times giving testimony. A day of testimony and evidence presentation and arguments as to whether Judge Crenshaw should take that additional step of dismissing the case for vindictive prosecution. And the burden is on the government. They have to show, when the presumption of vindictiveness has already been established by Abrego Garcia, they need to show that there is a legitimate reason to bring the case forward. And that isn't simply, oh, we think we have evidence, Your Honor. They have to show that it was brought for something that isn't an improper purpose, because even if there were evidence of his guilt, they can't bring it for a vindictive purpose. They need to show that it wasn't brought because Todd Blanche and the Trump administration were angry because a judge questioned their decision. That's the focus of the hearing. That's what we're going to hear testimony on and arguments on.
And interestingly, when I read the indictment that was brought against Abrego Garcia, the first thing I said was, this will not succeed. I drafted more indictments than I could ever count in my 30 years as a prosecutor. And when I read through it was based on, was it a 2021 or a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee? I'm not remembering the exact year, but it was a traffic stop from several years ago that didn't result, never mind in an arrest or in any charges, it didn't result in so much as a traffic ticket being given to Abrego Garcia. And if anybody is really interested, you pull that indictment up online and read it. It is largely fact free, but for this several year old traffic stop. And otherwise, it's full of conclusory statements like, oh, Abrego Garcia is a bad guy. He traffics people. He does this. He does that. But it is largely fact free. My understanding is it's based on one or two cooperators who may have had their arms twisted to say some things about Abrego Garcia. But I have said since the minute I saw that indictment, this is likely going to fall apart. And if the Judge Waverly Crenshaw down in Tennessee, grants the motion to dismiss based on vindictive prosecution, it will actually be the first criminal case that has been dismissed on a vindictive prosecution claim. People may remember that former FBI Director James Comey and current New York Attorney General Letitia James both made motions to dismiss based on vindictive prosecution, but the judges never even got that far because they threw those cases out on Lindsay Halligan not being lawfully entitled to enter a grand jury and obtain indictments in the first place. And those cases have not been resurrected, and I'm believing they likely will not be resurrected. So this would be, I think, an important first. The Trump administration suffering a loss, a motion to dismiss, because they vindictively tried to prosecute somebody. That would be important.
It would be the ultimate humiliation. And to your point, the fact that this is happening is so rare. Vindictive prosecution motions are very hard to win. In vindictive prosecution hearings, to even be able to present your case to a judge on this basis is so rare. And it would be such a string of defeats. Think about it. I remember when Kristi Noem was sitting in Congress and saying that Abrego will never, ever come back. He's taken into criminal custody. He wins 2 bail hearings where the information came out about those cooperators that you mentioned, Glenn. The 2 cooperators who are alleged to be, even at the government's own terms, much, much higher in this supposed conspiracy. And there are people who have been convicted multiple times. One of them deported 5 times, who are getting immigration and criminal help in order to testify against Abrego Garcia, who, even in the most generous reading of the government's indictment, is the low man on the totem pole, an accused driver. And the evidence largely hinges, as you noted, on this 2022 traffic stop that was ignored at the time. He was let off without a speeding ticket, and the case ultimately closed after the federal government spirited him out of the country to El Salvador, where he was tortured. So just think of the sequence of events. The fact that he was spirited out of the country to CCOT in March 2025 wins at every level in his habeas corpus case, all the way up to the Supreme Court, that there is an order that the federal government must facilitate his release. They take him to the United States, not to be reunited with his family, but to face criminal prosecution. He wins maybe 3 bail hearings. I think 2. The two bail hearings. It goes up to the federal judge from the magistrate. And then he's released, then taken into immigration custody, released from immigration custody after a long, protracted legal battle, and he's awaiting his trial at home. This is the next step. This is a vindictive prosecution hearing that could be the collapse of his criminal prosecution, we may never see the merits of the case. And I agree with you that all the available evidence as to the thinness of the case, but we may never get there because vindictive prosecution, if it's brought for an improper purpose, none of that matters. And that's what next Thursday's hearing is about.
It wouldn't shock me. This may be an outlier of a possibility. It wouldn't shock me if they found a way to dismiss the case entirely before the hearing, but we'll see what happens. I'll tell you, I am already looking forward to your coverage next week of that hearing. And there are two main takeaways from this entire saga for me. One, the federal courts are holding strong. By and large, federal judges from coast to coast, trial court judges, judges on the courts of appeals, but for half a dozen Supreme Court justices who seem not to be honest brokers of the law or the Constitution these days, the federal courts are holding strong. And the second takeaway, Adam, is if this Venezuelan immigrant, Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, can fight and fight and fight and win battles against Donald Trump's Department of Justice and Kristi Noem and others over and over and over again, I think we can fight. I think we can stand up for our rights and the rights of all people and fight what is largely a lawless administration. So thank you for your great coverage and reporting. Tell everybody where they can find you, Adam.
Thank you so much. You can find me at All Rise News on Substack. You can just visit www.allrisenews.com.
All right. Thank you. We'll be talking with you again next week. Thank you, everybody. I will see you at tonight's 8:30 community meeting. Take care.
Thank you, Glenn.